Hello and welcome to the Friday, November 20th, 2020 edition of On Iowa Politics. Hi, I'm James Lynch of the Cedar Rapids Gazette. And with me today are Bret Hayworth of the Sioux City Journal. Good morning, Bret.
Good morning.
Tom Barton of the Quad City Times. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
Amie Rivers of the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courie. Good morning, Amie.
Good morning, James.
Erin Murphy, Lee Newspapers Statehouse Bureau Chief. Good morning, Erin. Uh-oh. Erin?
Jinxed it.
No, that's all me. I'm the idiot. I had myself muted for.
Okay, so we'll pick it up in 3, 2, 1. Erin Murphy, Lee Newspaper Statehouse Bureau Chief. Good morning, Erin.
Good morning, James. Great to be here.
And Gazette Opinion Editor Todd Dorman. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning.
It feels just like Thanksgiving. We have the whole family here.
No.
Virtually, at least.
And we're all about to start arguing with each other.
Yeah, exactly. You can find us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to On Iowa Politics on iTunes and Stitcher. First up this morning, still counting 2.5 weeks after the election, and they're still counting ballots in Iowa's second House district. Marionette Miller Meeks won the race on election night. Then some more ballots were found, and Democrat Rita Hart was ahead. And then some more ballots were found, and Miller Meeks was back in front. Tom, what's changed since we last talked?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, not a lot has changed. The unofficial results still show Marionette Miller Meeks with a razor-thin 47 vote lead over Rita Hart. We're early in the recount process. Early on, there were some reports out of Scott and Johnson counties that each side had maybe picked up a few votes. I think Miller Meeks may have picked up 4 or 5 votes and Hart 1 or 2 after the recount boards looked at ballots with stray marks where the machine read a hesitation mark, a dot or a stray mark placed in the voting oval for one candidate, but they voted for another. And the machine read that as an overvote in the race, but the recount board determined that the voters' intent was clear that they voted for one candidate over the other, or they may have changed their minds and made a mistake on their ballot and crossed out a vote for one candidate and filled in the oval for the other. But again, the machine counted that as an overvote. Until they finish recounting all of the absentee ballots, primarily in Scott and Johnson counties, the 2 largest counties in the district, they really won't know whether the outcome of the race is going to change.
So there's been a lot of news about recounts in the wake of the presidential election. Is it the same atmosphere at these recounts, Tom? Or is it pretty exciting, or is it more like watching paint dry?
It is not exciting whatsoever. It's absolutely like watching paint dry or grass grow or ice melt. It's so far it's been a painstakingly slow process, at least from what I've observed in Scott County, where there's some 90,000 ballots to recount. The recount boards are being meticulous, and there's been some confusion about the process that's slowed it down. The Iowa Secretary of State's office yesterday said that the 47 vote difference in this race out of some 394,000 votes cast is unprecedented, and with 24 counties in the district having to conduct recounts, it's a very laborious and time-consuming process.
A lot of times recounts end up in court. Is anybody talking about that? Anybody putting Rudy Giuliani on speed dial?
Not that I've heard. I've not heard any whispers about challenging the results in court, and the campaigns won't comment, which is to be expected because we're still early on in the recount process and still don't know what the outcome may be of that process. I guess I will say this, though. Anytime you have lawyers in the room observing or participating in the recount process, I guess there's always that possibility for legal challenges. But at this point, knock on wood, I'm not hearing that.
Okay. Well, this week, Iowa's senior senator, Republican Chuck Grassley, announced via Twitter, of course, that he was quarantining at home because he's been exposed to someone who has tested positive for COVID-19. And then the next day, he said he had tested positive. According to his tweets, Grassley is feeling well and quarantining at his New Hartford farm. Amie, when I reported on Congresswoman-elect Ashley Hinson quarantining at home, someone on social media corrected me saying that she's isolating. According to this
Right.
person, you quarantine after being exposed, but isolate after being tested positive. Is there a difference here? Is there a difference in quarantining and isolating?
Yes, definitely. You've nailed it. Isolation is those testing positive, or if you haven't yet tested positive, but you're displaying a lot of the symptoms of COVID-19, so like respiratory symptoms or fatigue, things like that, then you're in that isolation category, which basically is the same thing as quarantine because you're kind of doing the same things. You're not being around people, but isolation means there's a very good chance that you have it. And quarantine means you could have it or you could eventually come down with it, but you haven't yet displayed any symptoms and you haven't tested positive. So since Grassley's tested positive, since Hinson tested positive, then technically they would be under the isolation protocol. But you're right. It's only sort of a difference in semantics and a difference in either you definitely or probably have it or you might get it.
So I guess the big news out of this for Grassley was that his record voting streak was broken this week because he went to Washington to vote, and I guess he has to, yeah, which is pretty incredible in itself.
It is.
And so he has to isolate for 14 days, and then he can go back to work, I guess, after Thanksgiving. Go back to Washington after Thanksgiving.
I'm not sure about his schedule, but yeah, I think if he's feeling good still and nothing ends up happening, I don't think he's necessarily out of the woods yet. He said he just tested positive 2 days ago. Sometimes symptoms don't kick in for a few days. But as of yesterday, he tweeted that he's symptom free and he continues to feel good. And he's been getting a lot of, encouragement and prayer. So it's very possible that he will be one of the people that does not come down with symptoms. He's of the age where if he does, it could be a very bad outcome. So you got to hope that he just doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Right. You also have to wonder, how this affects his decision on whether to run again, if he thinks he can stick around for another 27 or 28 years and keep that vote, break his own record for consecutive votes.
Right. It's only his own record right now, right? Yeah. It might be a good time if he's seeing what's happening in Iowa. If he's seeing sort of, Joni Ernst come away with a victory, 2 or 3 out of 4 House districts come away Republican, he might see this as the moment when it's okay to actually step away. Unlike when Harkin stepped away, maybe it's a good time. If he can get the right person in that seat, maybe he can trust that it's going to stay in Republican hands.
Yeah, and I've heard people sort of theorizing that he will run for re-election and then retire, and the governor can appoint his successor who would then stand election in 2 years, sort of this, all sorts of...
I always forget about that contingency, yes, but they definitely has that available to him. Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure there are a number of Democrats out there, figuring, looking at all the conspiracy theory approaches to how Republicans are going to hold that seat. Meanwhile, Governor Kim Reynolds has issued a mask mandate, which we might call mask mandate light.
Yeah.
Erin, which is longer, the mandate or the list of exceptions?
It's close. It's close. There is. I'm looking at the governor's proclamation right now, and the exceptions are listed alphabetically, and they go all the way to K. So that tells you right there how many exceptions are in there, and it starts with, and this isn't even considered an exception. One part of it that some folks have been critical about is that you don't have to be required to have your mask on in public, even when you're around people, until you've been around them for 15 minutes or longer. So if you run into the grocery store or gas station or whatever, and you're only in there 10 minutes or so, technically you don't have to wear a mask. That's drawn a lot of criticism as part of this. Why it's kind of been called a mandate with air quotes around it. So it is more than what we've had. We didn't have anything. And the governor has been resistant to these throughout the pandemic. She says that they're just not enforceable, points to other states that have them, and that they haven't seemed to have done much to slow the spread there. She finally, with the numbers just going nuts right now, finally did at least put this much in place. But yeah, there's more than a few exceptions and loopholes to this thing.
So if I understand the rules correctly, Amy, when I leave the safe confines of my home, assuming my wife is not COVID positive, I need to carry a watch, a tape measure, and a stopwatch, right?
Just wear a mask. It's something that we've been told really for a lot of months now. Like in the very beginning, of course, they were like, maybe a cloth mask doesn't do enough. But that was really quickly overturned by everybody from federal to state to local health officials. So it's really just become a politicized thing. Does the mandate even sway people to wear a mask if there's no enforcement? Is the big question. I will say it could be a lot worse. If you've noticed South Dakota's governor talking about masks, she won't even recommend them. And that's something that we've at least been lucky that Reynolds has been doing. She's very heavy on the personal responsibility, but she does think that the correct personal responsibility is to wear a mask. Unlike, the South Dakota governor neighbor to our west.
Yeah. Remember,
Jim?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to add that this doesn't really add to the discussion other than to maybe give everybody a laugh. When you said the taking the tape measure thing out, I remembered South Park, and for anybody who's familiar with that show, brace for what's coming.
Pandemic special.
Their pandemic special, and one of the characters is walking around with a 6-foot-long stick to make sure everybody stayed at least 6 feet away from it. It was absolutely hilarious. And it made me think of that when you said the tape measure thing. I'd love to see that. Just people walking around with 6 feet sticks and tape measure, keeping everybody at a safe distance.
Remember 8 months ago when we joked about wearing masks while recording On Iowa Politics? For some reason, it doesn't seem so funny now. Bret, you did sort of a man on the street interview to get some people's reactions to the governor's mask proclamation. What did they have to say about it?
Yeah, I wanted just to go back quickly to a couple of strands that were just talked about. For myself, as I've been writing these stories, I've been typing it as a partial mask mandate. And I wanted to share, as we talked about tape measures and stopwatches, I wanted to say that we might get some chastisement because this came up during the Tuesday Woodbury County Supervisors meeting. So that, it went into effect at 12:01 a.m. on Tuesday. And at the end of the supervisors meeting, they just, out of where they can talk about anything, they brought up, they started talking to the sheriff's officers, like, is there enforcement, and like what would be fines for people that aren't wearing masks as part of the new proclamation. So they had a discussion on that, and basically the one of the upshots was that the proclamation says that all peace officers in Iowa are supposed to be helping enforce this, but it's a misdemeanor and there are no fines that are associated with it. So it's on a kind of still hands off. And then at that point, one of the county supervisors, whose name is Rocky DeWitt, made a joke about tape measures and stopwatches, and then was quickly shut down by and maybe, I guess, I don't know if this is the voice of reason or the adult in the room or whatever, so, to our kind of joking that we just did here a few minutes ago, but that said, well, people are dying and it's not funny to laugh about that. So anyway, back to where the person on the street, it was interesting to get out and talk. And just to be clear, James, mine I talked to these people last Friday. This was after she had done the, I guess, parsed some changes a week ago Tuesday, and then before this Tuesday one, that was it. I was talking to people in between those two elements that she had done. But it was good I always like to hear people out, and it was good to hear people talk about masks in person rather than a lot of it. What's been coming at me is through my Facebook or Twitter feed, of people's observations on this. So it was, it was the range of spectrum that you would expect. There was people who were still questioning whether masks work. I guess they haven't heard anything from what the CDC says or health professionals hasn't trickled all the way into their brain yet or something. But they were at that point where I was phrasing it, and this is somewhat interesting, was did you want, basically the questions I asked was, would you support for South Dakota, as we talked about, for Nebraska and for Iowa, all three states that we cover here, there's no mask mandate. Do you support a mask mandate? And if Biden were to put one, would you support a federal mandate? So that was the questions I posed. And again, the people that would speak on behalf of, yes, I want a mask mandate. And there was a few that would actually want the federal mask mandate, that they were in support of that. They framed it in the terms of, the greater good of the community and the health of the community. And then you still had people who weren't so sure. And they, for what Reynolds came out with on Tuesday, there was a guy who kind of was, in her camp, well, it kind of depends. If you're only going to be around someone for so long, or if you're going to be apart from them, then, maybe we don't need a full mask mandate. So, I guess that person was kind of prophetic and would have liked what Reynolds came with out on Tuesday.
Yeah, people are really all over the place on this, and I guess it's one of those cases of where you can sort of find something to support every position. So
Sure.
I'm not sure that we'll ever reach a consensus on this. But Todd, you've been calling for a mask mandate for months, so you must be ecstatic about this latest proclamation.
Oh, I don't know if ecstatic would be the correct word to describe anything going on in the current situation. But I understand where Brett's coming from. With I every time I say something about this stuff, I expect chastisement for sure. So, she does have this partial mandate. Her credibility is sort of undermined by how she spent much of October, and the photos are out there to prove it, that she was campaigning and not always wearing a mask, and at events where lots of people were not wearing masks. And all that time the numbers were getting bad, and she wasn't having briefings really. I guess she was doing some interviews with radio stations or local newspapers. I'm not sure who exactly. But now we get into November, the election's over, the numbers are even worse. It's out of control, and she's decided to do some mask rules. And I think the consensus, on the side of the spectrum that's wanted more state action, or just even a signal that the state is taking this seriously, it's too little, too late. And then we're hearing now from some folks on the Republican side, on the conservative side of the spectrum, that are talking about that the governor has overstepped and is infringing on their constitutional right to spread COVID. So it's, so yeah, the idea that she can't win is sort of, I mean, that's kind of where she's at. And really, all of the months that we've spent while she was downplaying the virus and asking us to live with it, and saying that she was using targeted public health measures rather than broad measures. It's just, this has only gotten worse. And I think I mean, I agree with the critics that this may be helpful a small amount, but I mean, this thing is out of control, and I think she's late and could have gone further.
Todd, do you think that the governor might, hindsight being 2020, might wish she had done this, 6-8 months ago, because it's become sort of a no-win proposition for her base, her political supporters oppose what she's doing now, and at least on social media say they're not going to follow the mandate, and her political opponents give her no props, no credit for this latest mask light mandate. Um, I mean, it just seems like she's put herself in a no-win situation uh, where she can't. I mean, nobody really is supporting what she's doing. The people who don't like masks don't support it. The people who do like masks don't support her. So, I mean, this just seems, from a political standpoint, a no-win situation, doesn't it?
Well, and she bought into the idea that was sort of, peddled by the Trump administration early on, that, or at least in April and May, that we need to get the country open again to buoy the economy, and we need to get the kids back in school and all of these things, because we can't let the cure be worse than the disease, is sort of the battle cry of a lot of folks that are critical of public health measures. But a lot of folks who know a lot about infectious diseases and the economy and all of these subjects said your economy is not going to fully recover until you control the virus. And so, what we're seeing is that we allowed businesses to be open for all this time, but businesses are still closing, restaurants are closing, because even though they're open, people still don't have the confidence in the safety of going out and going out to eat, or at least a lot of people aren't confident. So business therefore suffered. We're going to see a Christmas shopping season now that's going to be in the middle of this huge wave of cases and hospitalizations and deaths. And I can't believe that's going to be good for the brick and mortar businesses in Cedar Rapids and in any retail center in the state. So there were lots of people saying you got to control the virus before you can help business and help the economy and make sure that the schools are safe and that people can celebrate the holidays and go to college football games. But she insisted on opening fast and telling people to live with it and downplaying the need for a large scale response. And now here we are in the middle of a crisis, and her past performance and her credibility on this are not, she's not in a place where she can credibly do this without, with getting support from the people that have calling for her to do it, and also her side of the political spectrum that she's been telling all along, well, yeah, just live your life, do what you want. They're not going to go along with her now either.
In a way, it seems like this is just human nature. You can tell me what to do, but I don't have to do it. And we've seen this with seatbelts, texting and driving, safe sex, eating too much red meat.
Yeah. Well,
We should be able to just do the right thing. But
I get a lot of emails from people that are sending me all of these studies that they've found that claim masks don't work. There's a Dutch study I've gotten 20 times, and usually my recommendation to them is to print the study out, fold it up, and make it into a mask.
Earlier this week, the Interfaith Alliance called for a mask mandate because Governor Kim Reynolds asking Iowans to do the right thing wasn't working. What struck me is, what does it say about our faith leaders that they can't get the faithful to do the right thing? I mean, that just, like, wait a minute. Aren't you the folks that are supposed to be guiding us and getting us to do the right thing? But I guess we're not paying attention.
Masks hide the face of God, is what I was told in one particularly interesting email.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, and some of that's a small group of pastors. I think it was 4. I think some of them, or one of them was, they talk about rights, but it's they work to get judges. The justices kicked off the bench in 2010 for recognizing marriage equality, and
Right.
I think they've tried to stir up some opposition to transgender rights. So yeah, rights for us and other people, not so much.
Moving along here, And speaking of people, getting people to do the right thing, coming off a wildly successful election in which Republican candidates carried 4 or 5 federal races here in Iowa and expanded their majority in the state legislature, Republican Party of Iowa Chairman Jeff Kaufman has announced he will stay on for another term. His counterpart, State Representative Mark Smith, not unexpectedly announced that he will step down as Iowa Democratic Party chairman in January. He was brought on after Troy Price resigned in the wake of the February caucus debacle. In announcing his decision, Smith said he believes the values of the Democratic Party are the values of Iowans, but it's also clear that our party must rebuild, retool, and re-energize moving forward. If you remember, after the 2014 and 2016 elections, we were writing obituaries for the Iowa Democratic Party. This summer, we thought the party was on the rebound. Erin, what is rebuild, retool, and re-energize going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a question that the Iowa Democrats are asking themselves right now. You know, beyond the state party chair, I think the more important question is about the kind of candidates and campaigns that they run. And not to say that the state party chair position is not important, because it obviously is, but if they're going to have success in future elections, I think they need to figure out if they're running the right kind of candidates and if those candidates are running up with the right kind of messages. So I think that's where the most soul searching needs to be taking place, and I don't think I'm saying anything that any Iowa Democrats would disagree with.
Bret, there have been a lot of names mentioned for who might be the next party chair, and one of the names being thrown around is J.D. Scholten. He had a post earlier this week at Iowa Starting Line on Democrats needing to do year-round organizing, and I just wonder, do you think this was the start of his campaign for chairman?
Yeah, I wish I had a direct answer where like I knew, could talk to him directly, and I am remiss for not. I spoke to him on election night and said, we'll catch up after the election, and now we're starting to work from home here, and so I haven't been able to catch up with him in person, which doesn't mean I certainly couldn't phone him to find out, but I don't have a strong feel for that. I know, absolutely, the way he ran his campaign the second time here when he lost to Randy Feenstra in Iowa's 4th, that was a full-on, almost a 2-year, the full 2-year cycle he was out running, and he was out hitting, all these towns in the 4th district, and it didn't accrue to his benefit, obviously, this time because of how the election went, but he's a big believer in that element, and there's probably a good lesson that could be learned. And we've talked about this before of how so much of Democratic campaigning in for these statewide races or these congressional races it's geared to the cities, and the smaller rural towns are kind of left wanting, and don't see a lot of candidates coming through. I don't know. I know there's a lot of people that would want him to run for perhaps governor in 2022, or perhaps for the U.S. Senate that we mentioned with Chuck Grassley coming up. I think he really likes campaigning, and this is just my thoughts. He likes campaigning. He likes connecting with Iowans, and I feel like he would be maybe just more versed to be a candidate next time than as opposed to chairman, like overseeing the entire the whole team, so to speak, for the state.
Interesting. A lot of other names, of course, being thrown around: Amber Gustafson from Ankeny, Abby Finkenauer, Jody Clemens from Cedar County, and Kurt Meyer up in North Iowa, Deirdre DeGeer, Jackie Norris, Ras Smith. Any other names people are hearing or people they want to nominate for chairman?
The only other one I'll toss in there, and I'll preclude this by saying all of these names, what's going to be interesting about the next few months into a year for Democrats is we've now got this position open, and we've got 2 huge statewide races coming up. So it's going to be interesting to see who wants to run for what, who wants to run for state party chair, who wants to run for the U.S. Senate race, and who wants to run for governor. And so any of these names we toss about, could go in any of those three directions, maybe. The one I'll add to the list is Janet Peterson, who just stepped down as leader of the Senate Democrats, but in doing so, kind of gave a pretty clear indication that her, political career is not over, and kind of gave the sense that she wants to do something else, continue to stay active in the party. So whether that's running for Congress in the 3rd district, or maybe she's interested in a position like a state party chairman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she did sort of indicate that there was something else out there on the horizon for her. Out on our horizon, of course, is Thanksgiving, and in honor of Thanksgiving, we won't be recording on Iowa Politics next Friday. That will give you more time for your Black Friday shopping, or football, or whatever floats your gravy boat. And however you like your turkey, roasted, deep fried, smoked, Instapotted, spatchcocked and grilled, or tofu'd, here's wishing you a happy Thanksgiving. And because it's 2020, I'll make mine wild turkey. That's it for this edition of On Iowa Politics. I hope it was worth your time. If you liked it, tell a friend and subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you find your podcast. Send fan mail to podcast@thegazette.com. And you can find us on the homepages of the Quad City Times, the Sioux City Journal, Muscatine Journal, Mason City Globe Gazette, Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, and the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Lojo Russo will take us out, and if you know an Iowa band or musician who should be on our show, send us a sound file and subscribe to On Iowa Politics on iTunes and Stitcher. For Bret, Amie, Tom, Erin, Todd, and our producer Stephen, I'm James Lynch. Thanks for listening. Stay well.
Sitting in my bedroom corner cafe, drinking coffee, and I'm daydreaming. Looking out the window, watching as the wind blows away. Listen to the singer singing softly about heartache, and I'm thinking, which way does the sign show? Which way will my life go today? And the jasmine wind blows through my dreams, covers me in its warm caress. Sweet as honey, smooth as cream is my jasmine wind. Water clear and cold runs down the street beneath the ice flowing.